What's up, guys? Rob from LegitBrowniesGaming here, bringing you a NHL 13 drop-in game gameplay thing. I don't really know. Um, this was the first time I played a drop-in game in quite a while, so um, I just decided to jump in and record a video because, like I promised, I was bringing out what I thought was originally going to be one commentary, but um, the length of which, I did a few like kind of test runs, and I actually had one now I thought was complete, and then um, technical difficulties and corrupt files prevented me from actually producing that commentary. But it ended up being that the topics that I was doing were actually too long just for one video, so it ended up being that I had to record a second video. But this is the first part of what I guess you can call a two-part commentary about my feelings on hockey, and not just NHL hockey, but just hockey in general. Not field hockey, mind you, but ice hockey, street hockey, deck hockey, blah blah blah, all that fun stuff. And the first part, this part is going to be about. Oh, quick note on the gameplay, real quick. I am left defenseman, and defense is not my natural position, so if I suck, you know why. But this first part is about why I think hockey is the greatest sport in the world, and I really do think that, honestly. If you ask me what the best sport in the world is, I grew up with football and baseball, but I also grew up with hockey, but then I kind of lost track of it after the lockout because most television stations stopped carrying NHL hockey after that 2004 lockout, I think. I'm not so sure when it was, but the first lockout, not this most recent one. I kind of lost touch with it, but I actually grew up watching all three of those sports, but I really come to admire hockey on a new level that is above the other sports. And the first reason is that there just seems to be an attachment and dedication to the sport, no matter who you really are. I mean, you know, major major professional athlete or just somebody like me who enjoys pickup games with friends, it just seems like everyone who's ever tried and played the sport just really enjoys it, even if they're not that good at it. They just seem to like playing it, and I think that's, it's great because it's not necessarily a sport where you have to be amazing at it to enjoy it. I mean, you can be, decent and okay, and that kind of leads into my next topic where, I think one of the reason there's a lot of attachment to the game and there's so much dedication and people love it is because of the diversity of roles on a hockey team. I mean, I think more so than any other sport, um, if you can play the game, then there's a role for you. I mean, if you're a guy who likes to go out there, dangle and score goals, then you're what's considered a hockey sniper. That's your job. You go out there, you have a wicked wrist shot or a great slap shot like Steven Stamkos, and you score more goals. And you're a goal scorer. That's your job. If you like passing, like if you're not as good at passing, yeah, if you're not as good at shooting, this is kind of like the kind of player I am. I don't have the greatest shot in the world, but I like to think that I'm, good enough at passing to make up for it because I can, get the pass to the guy who is really good at scoring goals. And then, if you do that, then you're considered a playmaker. You set up the play, you get more assists than goals most of the time. And that just becomes your job. You're not going to score the most goals on the team, but you're going to help a lot of guys score goals because you can, get that great pass through to get to a guy in the slot, or, make the cross crease pass through somebody's legs, or, saucer and all that other fun stuff. Um, if you're not offensively gifted as a forward, if you're more defensively gifted, then you can be a grinder, If you like to hit people, you can be the grinder, you back checking and stick checking, defensive game, then you're the grinder. If you play both ends of the ice, kind of evenly, then you are two-way forward. If um if you're a big guy like or even girl if you're big in terms of, physical size, and you can drive to the net, drive wide, and, get proper angles for your teammates and whatnot, then you can be a power forward because, you're not necessarily going to snipe it all the time. You're not necessarily going to pass it as well, but, you're that big body presence that you can clear the front of the crease, or you can sit in front of the crease and, get the deflection for the goal and all that other great stuff. If you, even if you're not necessarily, the biggest scorer in the world, if you're the kind of guy that, likes to protect teammates, or, fight in hockey, or, throw big body checks and just get under the other team's skin, kind of throw them off the game, then you can be a team's tough guy. Um, protect the star players that don't want to fight because that's your job. Or, if you're a defenseman and, you like playing offense, you're offense defenseman. Like, there's so many different roles on a hockey team that there's almost a role for literally everyone. And I think that's great, and I think that's one of the reasons that leads to a lot of dedication to the game, because there's almost a position for everyone, and if you're a goalie, well, then you're a goalie. There's not too much to deliberate on that. There is different styles of goaltending, but since the next video I'm going to be doing is actually about goaltending, I'm going to shy away from talking about goalies too much in this video. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's the diversity of roles. It leads to a lot of people really enjoying the game. Um, the next thing I want to talk about is just the toughness of NHL athletes. And if anyone ever tries to tell you that hockey players aren't tough, then they're lying. They really are. I'm going to go out on a limb and even say that hockey players are the toughest athletes, in major sports. And what I consider major sports is football, basketball, baseball, hockey, and soccer. And, you can make the argument that hockey players are the toughest athletes in major sports, because I read this thing, I don't remember where I read it, but it said something like, NHL hits are 30% harder, even though NHL athletes are 20% are on average 20%, smaller than a football player. So, NHL hits are harder than football player hits, even though, hockey players are smaller. And if you hear a lot of wind, it's because I'm outside. I love being outside, and I think, it's a great thing to do. I love making commentaries outside. It's awesome. But I'm not trying to say that football players aren't tough. Believe me, they really are. But, you hear stories all the time of hockey players just playing through, like, injuries that would have most people sidelined for, weeks or days, like, even months. Alexander Ovechkin played the entire Washington Capitals New York Rangers series this year with a fractured foot. Now, a fractured foot, you shouldn't even be able to stand. A lot of doctors recommend with a fractured foot that you sit and just get rest, and he was out there competing at the NHL level with basically what is a broken foot. Um, you know, I think it's Patrice Bergeron this year, who was it Bergeron or Krejci? I forget, but it was a series that this Bruins player, he played the Stanley Cup playoffs with just these crazy. He had like injury, I think, or injuries. He even had a hole in his lung, like a small hole in his lung, and he was just out there playing hockey. So like, even Gregory Campbell, who blocked a shot, which immediately I think broke his foot or his ankle, or fractured it, whatever. He was out for the playoffs, but he blocked a shot that broke his foot, and he stayed on the ice and killed off the penalty. Like, most people, if they broke their foot, they'd be done. They just lay wherever they are, broke your foot in your front lawn or whatever, and like that's just crazy. And he's still being an effective penalty killer, which is just nuts. So, you know, 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 so It was okay, so it was Patrice Bergeron. Broken rib, torn cartilage, and a separated shoulder, and a small hole in his lung, and he was still playing NHL hockey. That's crazy. So if anyone ever tries to tell you that NHL athletes are tough, then they're lying. Because these guys, they don't sit out for anything. I mean, Steven Stamkos a couple years ago in the playoffs, he got hit in the face with a slap shot. He went in the back, they stopped, and he came back out and played the rest of the game. That's just crazy. Like NHL athletes are just tough as nails, and they almost never, if they can play physically, then they'll be like, sure, I'll play. Whatever. It's only a broken foot. But that's also what leads to, the compete level or the competitive level at in hockey that, you know, the competitive level in hockey is just so high. And I think that's one of the reasons I like hockey more than football is because on any given night, any team can beat another team. I mean, you can make that argument for any sport, but it just seems like it happens so much more in hockey. Like, I mean, if the New England Patriots played someone like the Miami Dolphins, a couple years ago when the Dolphins won, I think it was like 1-13 or something ridiculous. Like they won one game the whole season. I mean, when they played a team like that, you basically knew who was going to win, right? They were just going to the Patriots would have crushed them. But in hockey, you can have a team like the Columbus Blue Jackets of last year beat a team like the New York Rangers of last year when they were all the way up at the top. It's top of the Eastern Conference. Like it on any given day, any other team can show up and win the game. More so than I feel in other sports, and that's what makes the competitive level so high because you can't take a day off. Like a great example last year when the Pittsburgh Penguins were attempting to catch up to the New York Rangers in the Atlantic Division title race towards the end of the year. They had a home and home against the New York Islanders, who at the time were at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, and the Islanders beat them both times. A team that is chasing first place in the East lost to a bottom 15, a bottom 5 team twice in a row. And that's what's so great about it. You can't give up. You can't just settle back and say, "Oh, we're gonna crush these guys," because it might not happen. And that's great because it makes for really fun games to watch. You can sit down and say, "I don't know who's gonna win." You really can't. Um, Another great thing about NHL hockey, or just hockey in general, again, is the sort of connection and brotherhood that players seem to develop when they play this game. Especially when you see guys that play together for a while, like you know, what's this? I think it was Max Talbot and Fleury on the Penguins. They developed, a really great friendship that they had together for when they were on the team, and they were pretty good friends for each other. And when Evgeny Malkin won the Hart 2 years ago, during his speech, he said that he's going to dedicate the award to one of his best friends, Sergei Gonchar, and Sergei Gonchar wasn't even on his team. Like the brotherhood and connection that develops through the game it's pretty great. It's almost I want to say it's probably the and athletes or anybody that plays hockey are probably some of the closest people in any sport. I mean, and I'm not trying to point fingers at sports here. That's not the point of this. I'm not trying to trash other sports, but like, being a Jets fan, for a while I had to hear the whole, um, locker room meltdown. This player's pointing fingers at this player. This player's saying this guy sucks. This guy's saying this guy's not trying hard enough. And you do hear that occasionally in the NHL. The whole Alexander Semin thing a few years ago where people were claiming Semin doesn't try hard enough or doesn't give his all. But for the most part, in hockey, when it comes to internal things, if a team loses a game, you don't hear players pointing fingers at each other. Like if you ask Brian Callahan, why'd you lose 6-0 tonight? he's not going to be like, well, Henrik Lundqvist shit the bed. No, he's going to be like, maybe, the team didn't perform as well as we could have. We were probably, a little lacking in our own defensive zone. And I mean, even when Jonathan Toews won, the Chicago Blackhawks, not Toews won the Stanley Cup. Well, he did, but the team won the Stanley Cup, the Chicago Blackhawks. In his victory speech, I don't remember if he even said I once, and if he did, then it was probably something along the lines of, I can't believe, what a team we had this year or something like that. Like when it comes to hockey, it's all about the team. That's really it. Hockey is a team sport, and I think that's great because it helps a lot of guys develop good friendships and respect for each other. And how much longer does this commentary have anyway? I'm running out of time, aren't I? La, 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 la. I've got 7 minutes. All right, 7 minutes. We're up 2-1 in the drop-in game. Nice. Sorry, guys. Had to take a sip of water there. My throat was getting a little dry. But anyway, we're gonna go on down to the last bullet I have here. I had 5 reasons, and the last bullet I have here is sportsmanship. And I already talked about the tremendous respect hockey players have for guys in their own teams, but even when it comes to respecting guys on other teams, the hockey world has some great, great sportsmanship. I mean, of course, there are exceptions you can point out, but for the most part, hockey players just have undying respect for each other. Uh, like I said, there are exceptions, but I think one of the greatest things hockey does is after every single Stanley Cup playoff series, no matter who wins or who loses, at the end of the playoff series, there's a handshake line, and you might be like, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, it just goes to show you that no matter how hard fought a series or how hard fought or bitter a playoff series can be, at the end you can end up hating the guts of the other guys, but you still have the self-decency and respect for your opponents that you just fought in with this series, that at the end, you shake their hand and you say, you know what, that was good series, good games, you guys might have gotten the better of us, but you probably deserve to win, good game, good series, blah blah blah. And you know, that's just one of the greatest things I think about hockey is the handshake line, because it just goes to show you just how much respect these players have for each other, even at the end of a hard-fought series. So, that's great in my opinion. I love that about NHL hockey. Um, and I mean, even, one of the better examples of respect is the tough guys in the rooms, the locker rooms. You know, Tough guys probably are one of the most respected people on a team, even more so than, you know, some other players, because they're there to protect you. They're there to protect their guys and get their job done. But yeah, um, just to recap, the 5 reasons I had was the attachment and dedication to the game, the diversity of roles, the toughness and compete level, the brotherhood, and the sportsmanship. And I really do consider hockey a beautiful sport. It's fun to watch. It's even more fun to play. Um, and you just hear so many great stories coming out of it. Like when Detroit won the Stanley Cup, I forget the guy's name, but one of their members got into a car accident, I think, and I don't remember if he was paralyzed or his legs were broken or whatever. But he couldn't play the next season. And the next season, when Detroit won the Stanley Cup, usually when you win the Stanley Cup, your captain is the first one to hoist the Stanley Cup. But I think the captain was Lidstrom at that point. Nick Lidstrom, he didn't hoist the Stanley Cup first. He skated over, and their player, who was in the wheelchair from the car accident, still, a year later, you know, Lidstrom gave him the Stanley Cup first, and the team, crowded around, and it was it was a beautiful moment, just to demonstrate the brotherhood and love that these players have for each other. That you know they're willing to sacrifice an age-old tradition of captaincy, raising the Stanley Cup first, and give it to one of their players who suffered this horrible accident, and it was great. It was a really great moment, and that's just the kind of stories you hear coming out of hockey a lot. And I really love the game. So that was my opinions on why hockey is the greatest sport in the world, and I truly do believe that. The next video is going to be on why I think goaltending is the best position, or yeah, the best position in all of sports, and why it's also the most noble position. Right now, I think the gameplay on here is winding down, so I'm not just gonna let the gameplay kind of like dwindle down here. But for part two of this mini series, I guess you can say. Um, I'm gonna let the gameplay play itself out. There's only about a couple seconds left in the game, so I will talk to you guys next time.